Minimalists.
Hey, patrons. All
What's
right,
up?
before we dive into our surprise questions today, we're here with Shelby. And before we talk about buying less, let's read some more about less. The article I have here today is from money.com. Actually, before we dive into this interview, we were talking during the break here, just briefly. Shelby, you were mentioning people worried about sustainability becoming trendy.
Yeah.
Man, that seems like a great problem to have, right?
Yeah.
It does. Yeah, I don't know. People always ask me, like, is it bad for it to be trendy or is it a good thing? And I don't see it being a bad thing unless it completely stops and then we just don't care. But why would that happen unless some research came out that said nothing we've been caring about matters anymore?
Right.
You know, I didn't become a minimalist for the environment, but it was a really beautiful, like, side effect I didn't even anticipate at first. For me, it was like, oh, my finances are really out of control. I'm just buying too much junk that I don't need.
Yeah.
It's stressing me out. I'm worried. I can't fill the void with the stuff. In fact, it's widening the void. And then I started letting go and I started consuming more intentionally, and a beautiful byproduct of that is like, oh, wait a minute, like, I'm consuming less, so I'm producing less waste.
Yeah, right.
And I'm buying fewer packaged foods. In fact, I don't buy any packaged foods personally now, but that's for other reasons. I don't buy packaged foods because they tend to be less healthy,
Right.
but as a result, I'm not producing all the waste from that right now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think if sustainability became trendy, great.
Yeah.
And
There's nothing wrong with something being trendy.
Right. And
Like-
if we're just following something because it's a trend and that's the only reason, then that's not very helpful. But if it's what gets you in the door to start thinking about living more responsibly, then great. I hope you follow that trendy wave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I hope, being an environmentalist and, being a minimalist, like, I hope that becomes sexy.
I feel like it's getting there. I definitely feel
Yeah.
like the generation that's coming up right now, I think it's there a little bit.
I totally agree. It's like at our events, when we go on the road, we have high school kids show up. And even now, like, junior high kids in elementary school, it totally gives me some hope. Like, oh my goodness, like, all right, we're not totally screwed, I don't think.
Yeah, and well, the fact that we're even talking about these things, these aren't things that were talked about widely. I mean, there were some people talking about it 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, but not really. It wasn't in the common or the everyday vernacular. And now we're hearing these words like eco-friendly or sustainable, and people are asking questions, and they're starting to question their own consumption. And even if they don't agree with me or Ryan or Shelby about these things, they're at least starting to ask some questions. And when you are forced to ask these questions, you confront some hypocrisies in our own lives, we confront our own behavior in a way. We're all hypocrites to some extent, right? And I think that's okay. If we confront it, then that moves us. We're not moving toward perfect. We're just moving in a direction of a better version of ourselves.
Yeah, there was a saying recently that, like, 10 people doing zero waste is not as good as, like, millions of people doing zero waste imperfectly. So, like, yeah, we're not heading towards perfection, but
Right.
progress.
Yeah, I think the idea of zero waste is admirable, and at the same time, I don't think everyone's going to be a zero waste person. But if it inspires some people to consume less, that's great. For me, my lifestyle isn't about having zero waste; it's about having considerably less waste. I probably produce 90% less waste than I once did, and that's because I'm more intentional now. I'm even more intentional about the things that I purchase or whatever. I'm not drinking from a plastic bottle. We're using glasses, and there are reasons to do that. Now, I also don't beat myself up if a plastic bottle is the only option for me,
Right.
because I'm not so extreme that I'm pretty neurotic, but I'm not gonna worry so much if I can look myself in the mirror and say, you know what, I did the best I could, and I'm really thirsty, and we're at this rest stop right now, and the only option I have for me is this plastic bottle. Okay, but maybe I consume 99 fewer plastic bottles along the way, and that's really what's important.
Yeah.
And so I've got this article here from money.com, 12 ways to stop wasting money and can take control of your stuff. And this is by Kit Yarrow. I'm just going to read a little bit of this, and this is really just a jump off point for us to have discussions about these different topics. Kit writes, in my work as a consumer psychologist and author, I have read countless studies about consumer behavior, and I've conducted plenty of research on my own, interviewing hundreds of shoppers about how, when, and why they shop. Here's what I've learned about how to avoid piling up too much stuff and how to stop making unnecessary, excessive, and ultimately unsatisfying purchases. I think a lot of what your videos do, it talks a lot about that, Shelby. How do we stop making unnecessary, excessive, and ultimately unsatisfying purchases? I think that's what we realized. Like, I've been consuming excess for so long, I didn't even realize that these things aren't making me happy. Yeah. In fact, sometimes they get in the way of the things, the activities, the people that could bring joy to our lives. And so the first tip here to stop wasting your money is do an inventory check. Jenna Scholl, who has worked as a wardrobe stylist in San Francisco for more than a decade, told me, quote, "It's not uncommon for people to buy new things because they have so much they can't see what they already have." Have you seen that in your own life?
Yes. So I was going to say, I literally, that was my life. When I was in high school, I never repeated an outfit.
Where'd you grow up?
Magnolia, Texas. It's a suburb of Houston.
Okay.
Yeah, but I never repeated an outfit and became best dressed of my class because of that. And I can definitely relate, like every Friday going out and feeling like I need a new outfit because I just had so much, but none of it really went together or mattered to me in general. I think now, like you said, you have a uniform and I kind of have something similar. But those pieces matter to me. Whereas things within your closet, like fast fashion, are essentially disposable these days. And yeah, I definitely see that. A lot of people who follow me say they didn't realize how much better a smaller wardrobe could make you feel every morning when you're getting dressed.
Yeah, it's like it's less choices. Like it creates less friction in trying to decide what you're going to put on. What surprised me when I went through my closets after like simplifying everything, it was all the stuff I had in my closets that had tags on it still. Like it was unbelievable. And the reason why I bought those things, it was because maybe it was like a size smaller. So I'm like, in the future, you know, if I can lose a little bit of weight, I can wear this one thing. And it had like, you know, it's some kind of insert popular name brand there. And that's why I got it, because it was, you know, 60% off. And it was this really nice name brand thing.
Yeah.
And it just sat in my closet and never did anything but that.
Right. And they're, in a weird way, they become aspirational purchases. Like, wow, this looks really good on the mannequin, or look good on the person in the Ralph Lauren ad or something. So, of course, I am going to look the same in that as that chiseled guy.
You know why they look good on the mannequin? I started to notice this. Like, they will take like a chip clip or something, and they tighten the shirt, and then they clip it in the back to make it look fitted. And that's anyway. That's one, deceiving.
That's one reason. You're absolutely right. It's deceiving. The other reason is they all are Adonises. The mannequins
right,
are.
Yeah,
that
too.
They're not your typical body of a person. Yeah. It's like,
speak for yourself, Milburn.
All right. The next tip here is buy good quality and use it.
Yeah.
I guess you found that too. In order to be more sustainable, it's not about having just the throwaway items, the fast fashion, or the things that just disintegrate as soon as you purchase them, right?
Right, yeah. There's definitely a lot of different aspects of what is sustainable when it comes to clothing and what's not, like the fabrics it's made out of also, if it's synthetic. And most of the time that means they're really low quality. They're made really cheaply because the fast fashion companies intend for you to buy it, wear it a few times, and literally throw it out so that you have to buy more. Yeah, definitely moved far away from the Forever 21s that I used to shop at literally every week.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's crazy. So you became best dressed in your high school.
You know, you were saying you don't have a good style, but like, who really has a good style? Or, you know, some people do, but
Russell
mostly
Westbrook. He's a basketball player.
Yeah. But mostly people are just following the trends. And that's what makes them best dressed. That's what happened to me. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just buying what people said I should.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you look at Russell Westbrook, if we look at his outfits 20 years from now, we're going to think he was insane. Like, the stuff is like so on trend and it's like of the moment. But I don't believe that anything is truly timeless. Like, Ryan is wearing jeans and a black t-shirt right now. Like, if you go back to the 1400s, he would have been looked at like a crazy person. Like, why aren't you wearing a dress or whatever you were supposed to wear at the time, right?
Were guys supposed to wear dresses?
I mean, there are a lot of like giant onesies, and
I know like little boys, they would, like, growing up, they dressed them as girls for whatever reason. I don't know. Anyway,
in the 1400s.
Yeah, no, seriously,
okay.
like centuries ago, they used to do that. Anyway.
Yeah. So number 3 here is count your blessings. First and foremost, being grateful not just for your possessions, but also for the people, places, and simple pleasures in life.
Amen.
Is good for the soul. I think that's something that we often take for granted. Is like when you were going out shopping for all these clothes, you certainly weren't grateful for the ones that were in your closet. As soon as you acquired them, you no longer wanted them and you wanted something else.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, well, the contrast between Shelby 10 years ago and Shelby now, people don't recognize me as a person. And I definitely didn't value like friends or family or experiences. And I just feel like life is so much more fulfilling when you get past that meaningless stuff like the clothing, and you get to the things that really bring you happiness, not like momentarily, but long term.
Yeah. I think it's so important. Like when I'm feeling, I don't know, if I'm feeling down, like, you know, even though I am, you know, living the dream, like I still have days where I'm like, what the hell am I doing with my life? But like really taking a moment and appreciating the things that we do have, especially when it comes to things that you can't buy, whether it's relationships or whether it's an experience or going for a walk or whatever. Like those things can really, for me, like just help me kind of get over that hump.
The next item on our list here is turn off the temptation.
Amen.
Imagine having a friend who is constantly telling you about seemingly terrific deals. Ryan and I do this now with
Joseph A. Banks.
Joseph A. Bank. Are you familiar with this men's clothing store?
I mean, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't buy. I don't shop there.
Well, so Ryan and I used to manage a bunch of retail stores back in the day, and so and there were a lot of them were in malls. And the joke was, even back then, we recognized So Ryan didn't recognize it, so why it's a joke.
All right, so I was managing a retail store directly across from one of these Joseph A. Banks stores.
And he had to wear a suit every day.
And I had to wear a suit every day, and I needed like dress shirts, and I wanted to like, you know, refresh my suits or whatever. And I was like, I look across and I'm like, oh, Joseph A. Banks is having a sale. I was like, maybe I will, you know, buy some of their clothes. So I text Josh, I'm like, dude, what do you think about Joseph A. Banks? Like, you know, is that trendy? Like Josh has way more style than I do, so I usually go to him if I have questions. And I was like, I'm thinking about going to Joseph A. Banks and buying some shirts and some suits and stuff. He was like, dude, there is always a sale at Joseph A. Banks. And until he said that, I didn't realize it. It's like their whole gimmick is like this weekend only. But like every weekend? Every weekend, yes.
Yeah, it's like sale, 48-hour sale, but it's every 48 hours there's something going on. And it's always these ridiculous things, too. It's like, I shit you not, it's like buy one shirt, get 3 free or something. It's not actually free. You're buying a $100 shirt, and they're just $25 shirts.
I like people get tripped up on that so much, and I refer to my mom a lot because she does the same thing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kohl's, the clothing store.
Oh yeah.
They do the exact same thing, and then they'll give her Kohl's cash, and then they'll give her 20% off, and I'm like, stop, please stop.
Like that's an endless funnel.
Yes, I think it's important to avoid sale price. This one says play the waiting game. We kind of already talked about that, like the 30-30 rule, waiting 30 hours for you, waiting 30 days. If it's $100 or more, I wait 30 days. That's part of my 30-30 rule. Learn to share. I'm not talking about the explosion of sharing economy businesses that facilitate things like car sharing and bike sharing. I'm talking about the old-fashioned DIY method of buying something with a friend or neighbor and owning it jointly.
Yeah.
I recently watched 2 young women negotiate sharing rights for a relatively expensive gold necklace they both wanted, and ultimately bought together at Nordstrom. Man, I mean, Ryan and I could do this with just about anything.
Yeah, let's go get some Figaros, man.
Yeah, some gold necklaces. That look dope, man. Just come in here with gold necklaces on the podcast.
Look like a dope. Yeah.
What about sharing? Do you share anything? Friends, family? Enemies?
Sometimes clothing and shoes with my sister, with enemies.
I thought maybe like try to to repair the relationship.
By sharing a gold necklace.
Squash the vendetta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, but that's really interesting. And I just was in Portland last week, and they're starting to have like tool share pop-ups, which is super cool. And I hope that becomes more of a thing as well. I'd really like to facilitate that because I don't think there is enough of that. I don't do that a ton.
There's a great business in Portland. We had Ryan Delk from Omni on the podcast a while ago, and he runs a company called Omni. That they are a product sharing place, and it started out in San Francisco, and they're in Portland now, and I think they may even be in a few other cities, where it's like a giant storage locker, but just happens to be online. You can get everything on there, like giant cornhole games. There was a Chewbacca costume last time I checked on there. Like,
that's great.
Oh yeah, like I don't need my Chewbacca costume right now. Does anyone want to borrow it?
Well, yeah, that's one of those things that you'd use like literally once in your life.
Right.
Hopefully just once.
Dude, yeah, speaking of like buying superfluous stuff like Halloween costumes, man, I cannot tell you when I got rid of rid of all the stuff in my closet, there were like 4 Halloween costumes in there that like I was never gonna wear again.
Well, it's weird because I think people used to DIY Halloween costumes with what they already had, and now it's just another thing that's been commoditized for people to go buy single use.
Halloween Express. We have a friend who he actually
runs like 1,000 of those. Yeah,
he like negotiates the leases, and it's an interesting business model because it is a temporary. It's like a pop-up shop. Like you pop up, 2-3 months before Halloween. Right. You advertise the hell out of it, and then when Halloween's over, you close up shop and you move away.
And people throw the stuff away, right? Yeah. And it's weird. Although I remember when we first moved to Montana, Ryan, back in 2012, that October, and you're like, I'm going to go out to a Halloween party, get together, whatever.
I totally gave into peer pressure.
Well, and the thing is, like, Ryan just went to the local thrift shop and bought a white and green T-shirt, and then like shaved his beard so that he had a mustache, and he went as Luigi.
I was gonna say Luigi.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, I always go for the tie-dye shirt and putting my hair in like some sort of hippie hairstyle and just doing that.
There you go. And so there's a sustainability aspect to that as well, and it's really about just being creative, being inventive with limited resources. These limitations breed creativity, and that's what Ryan did, and it sounds like that's what you do when it comes to Halloween as well. We don't have to go out, although my daughter, she will do really inventive things. She couldn't decide a couple years ago whether she wanted to be a princess or a dinosaur. And so she
what contrast.
Yeah, I know. So then she was a princess dinosaur for Halloween. So
why don't I have good ideas like that?
I think you should be a princess dinosaur this Halloween, Ryan. Buy only what you need right now. Part of what makes shopping so alluring is the mental vacation that comes with imagining how a product can be used, such as, I'll turn heads with this outfit, or we'll have the wildest parties with this cocktail shaker. That is true. Like, buying the aspirational sort of cutlery or plates, you're like, I'm going to have a table that seats 12. I hate dinner parties. Why would I do that?
Yeah. Have you heard of the fantasy self? Have you heard people describe it as that?
Tell me about it.
So it's basically that, where you think that you like these things or that you will be this person that you're just not. So yoga has become trendy recently. And a lot of people, their fantasy self thinks they like yoga. So they go out and they buy all this yoga like outfits, yoga mats, and all this stuff, and then they realize, I don't really want to practice
like
yoga.
They love the idea of practicing yoga.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with like special fancy dinner sets and stuff that you're not already using. So why are you trying to create someone that you are that you're not?
That's so true.
That's the thing. You're not being yourself. You're being the self you wish you could project onto the world. Like, it's I don't want to be an introvert. I don't want to be an extrovert. Like, I look at Ryan and I'm like, that would be awesome if I could be as extroverted as him. I don't actually want it. I want to want it. Yeah. And I think that's the fantasy self. Yeah. Which, by the way, is a really good episode title, podcast, Sean, for this one.
It's interesting. When I got married when I was like 19 years old and divorced at like 22, 23. But I remember the china being such a big deal. Like, we were picking out china. I forget what store it was. But like, so my mother-in-law, great woman, she went out of her way to buy us this china to make sure we had this beautiful china set for if we had, dinner parties. We never used it. Not once. Who is it? Rob Bell who uses it every single dinner?
Yeah, I really like that. So he said, if you're gonna have fine china, use it for every meal.
Right.
and so like, because what we do is like we have the nice things that we never ever use.
Right. Yeah.
It's like if you bought a nice a Tesla, and you're like, but I'm still gonna drive the Toyota Corolla every day.
Right?
Like, why?
Doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Well, you have to. I only drive the Tesla on special occasions.
Yeah,
Get
I
outta
think
here.
I'm getting married soon. My sister is getting married really soon.
Congratulations.
I'm getting married soonish. And I just gave her the shower, and she's making this list of all the stuff that she needs. And I'm like, but she's already been living with her fiance for years. Like, how are you getting by all this time without all this stuff that you need? So,
Right.
I definitely don't intend on having a registry or any of that stuff, because if I need it, I get it for myself.
I was in a wedding last summer. One of my good friends, one of my only other like childhood friend that I still talk to. They had a really awesome thing where they asked for no gifts, but it was just like a link to like, basically like a Patreon thing or, a GoFundMe thing where it's like, hey, if you want to contribute to our lives, we like to take vacations.
Yeah.
So you can just give us $50 towards a vacation and we will, we'll appreciate that.
That's a good
I thought it was a good idea. Yeah.
Can't believe you still have friends from childhood. There can be only one. All right, there's a whole list of things here. We'll put a link to this full article in the show notes so you can check it out. The 12 ways to stop wasting money and take control of your stuff from money.com. Let's talk about a few things here. Ryan, what are the other things on your list that you've stopped buying?
The other things I got aftershave
Mm-hmm.
or cologne. Like I don't use
same.
that
Those are
stuff anymore.
Two
Yeah.
good ones. Same here.
Yeah. Deodorant. I don't buy deodorant anymore. But here's
Same here.
But here's the thing: is that because I eat healthier, I don't smell as bad, and I
Yeah.
realized like that was a huge thing. Like if I ate crap, I not only felt like crap, but that's when my BO would be the worst.
Right.
Yeah, I stopped wearing deodorant in Missoula, Montana, because in Missoula, Montana, it's like such a hippie town.
Yeah.
That like if you don't have a little BO going on, you're kind of out of place.
You look like a weirdo.
Right.
Okay.
So I just stopped wearing deodorant to fit in.
Well, people say that if you stop wearing it, you'll detox, and then you won't have to anymore. Like,
Yeah.
do we really stink if we're not detoxing like aluminum from our armpits? Because that's what most deodorants are made out of. So that's really interesting. So neither one of you guys wear deodorant.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
And
So
do we smell?
No.
Okay.
So there
No,
was,
I don't think so.
And I walked here like a brisk walk. Like there was a 2-week, maybe like a month period.
Yeah, same.
Again, I was in Missoula, so it didn't matter that I stunk.
Right.
But like there wasn't a detox period, an adjustment period to where my body had to like re-regulate.
Okay.
But like
My wife loves it. Like she's like, I just love the way, and I'm same with her. Like there's like the pheromone thing, and
Right.
like it's one of the ways that we are attracted to people is through the smell.
And we just like kind of block all that stuff out now.
Right.
That's so interesting. That's a whole different topic. But I also don't wear perfumes, and when people wear them around me, I get like an instant headache. I hate that.
Isn't that crazy? Like I used to wear cologne all the time, and like now I'm the same way. Like I get around it, and like I can't tell you the last time I've smelled a fragrance, and I was like, oh man, that's
I like that. Yeah.
right. I gotta get that right.
No,
Exactly.
I hate when I get on an elevator and it's just been perfume bombed. I feel panicky.
yeah.
Or cologne bombed.
It's funny. I feel panicky too, but it's because it reminds me of like the club scene that I used to like try and be part of.
Yeah.
And I never fit in with that scene. So it was always, it caused anxiety for me because like I've always felt out of place.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when I step in the elevator and it's like, oh, it smells like one of them disco clubs in here.
That's terrible.
My former spouse is an 8th grade teacher, and she says basically the kids don't bathe; they just bathe in Axe body spray. So like, her classroom just smells like 30 different variants of an Axe body spray can.
Yeah.
I can't imagine dealing with that all day.
I mean, I guess you get used to it, but
Yeah, probably.
for a while, yeah, that would be very frustrating.
What are some things you've stopped buying? Can you reprise some of those few of those things from your videos?
Yeah, I definitely don't buy perfumes anymore. So I already said that though. Tons of things I quit buying, but I feel like it's been so long that it's normal to me now. But yeah, a lot of wasteful things that I don't buy anymore. What are some typical things people buy that I don't buy? It's a lot of stuff. I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
So like when it comes to clothes, you go out of your way to do secondhand clothes. So like, do you have what if like there's a listener right now and they want to stop buying brand new clothes? Like how would you walk them through that process? Are there like websites you would recommend them to go to, or
Yeah, so if you're starting, it is really good to not just like jump into Goodwill and like dig through everything. I always recommend starting on things like ThredUp or Poshmark.
Okay.
Because you can search for brands that you're already buying from, and you can find things that you would like if it was new or if it was old.
Yeah.
And then you get it in your head that secondhand shopping is not disgusting and just for weirdos. And then maybe you can ease yourself into the Goodwill stores and stuff like that. But
I think I might need to go to those sites. Ever since we did a clothing episode a long time ago, episode 56 of the podcast.
Let's make sure to get links for those in the notes podcast, Sean.
And I talked about the brand because I always buy my T-shirts from eBay, or at least I used to. I buy a brand called Save Khaki. And I always just go to eBay and get them. And ever since I mentioned that, they're never available on eBay anymore.
You screwed yourself out of the supply.
Now I have to go buy expensive T-shirts straight from Save Khaki because everyone has already bought up the eBay version. Yeah. So maybe Poshmark or ThredUp are a place to go. For me, I've stopped buying some things. Like I don't drink milk anymore, so I don't buy milk anymore. Yeah. Except I do for Ella, so I guess I've started rebuying milk just for Ella.
Hypocrite.
I know. Fake minimalist. Bread. I don't eat bread. Yeah. Sugar. Anything with processed sugar, I don't purchase. Packaged foods. We already talked about that during the minimal episode. Dryer sheets is something I don't. That's something I used to like. Why the hell did I buy those?
Dude, I love my dryer sheets. Why should I stop buying them? Talk me out of it.
Why do you love them?
For?
They create less static with my clothes, and I like the fresh little smell it gives my clothes. But what's the substitute? I'm open to stop buying them. What's the substitute
I use
for
these
them?
little like balls that are like these. I think they're made of wool.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're reusable over and over. I've been using the same ones for years.
And it takes the static down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's supposed to reduce the drying time too, because it'll like fluff your clothes, and then the heat can get into them easier. And you can also add essential oils to them if you really are crazy about scent.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. So, all right. So, Podcast Sean, please put a link to those wool things in the show notes because I'm going to go back and check them, and I will totally try to use those instead of the dryer sheets.
Yeah, I've been using them for years now.
Yeah, it's like I still buy paper towels. There is like a. I don't use them as much as I used to use the paper towels.
Yeah.
Like they're there for convenient
icky things.
Yeah, you're right, exactly. But like when it comes to paper towels, the issue of like chopping down trees, that isn't what really bothers me because there's actually like laws in place that you have to replace.
Right.
Yeah, you have to replace trees with the paper, but it doesn't solve the landfill problem though.
Yeah.
So if dryer sheets, that's one thing I can like take out of the landfill. Like I'm totally all for that for sure. Awesome. One thing I have written down here too that I don't buy anymore is cigarettes. I don't buy no cigarettes no more.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Like when I think about, just how I used to try to smoke. I never was like really a smoker. I just like tried to.
Good at it.
Yeah, I was never good at it.
Yeah, I also don't buy things. They're coming to my mind now, but I don't buy things like plastic cling wrap or foil or Ziploc bags. I don't know. I think those are pretty typical for a lot of people to like single use things, but they're reusable versions of all of those things.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So we've got, so we will inevitably, like Mariah and I will have, some kind of leftover something with like a plastic bag, and like we'll reuse the plastic bag as much as we can. But yeah, they have these interesting little, they're like jelly type stretchable things that you can put over bowls and stuff that like,
this is a point of contention in my household.
Why is that?
Because Bax is really into all of those things, and I've tried to, and I don't like them. Yeah. And so like, I think that's another thing to sort of take away here. We talked earlier about not being perfect. Like there are some things that's like if for some reason you start using these wool balls and you're like, these suck compared to my dryer sheets.
Right.
It's not about deprive yourself. You at least tried and you find something that works. I think the wool balls work appreciably better because they do dry your clothes faster as well. Plus the essential oil thing, which I've heard several people talk about. It's not something I do. You can add the scent to it as well.
Yeah,
it's a better scent than the dryer scent.
I totally agree. Like there's some essential oils I would much rather have my clothes smell like than the dryer sheets that I use.
I still use Ziploc bags, and I don't use them a lot, but we've had the same Ziploc bag of Ziploc bags in our drawer for well over a year, but I use them occasionally.
What about the sous vide? Do you guys use the disposable or do you guys use the
reusable?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And we wash them, and Bex is constantly washing the Ziploc bags as well. So
Shelbizleee, let's make sure that Podcast Sean somehow like email him just the replacements that you use now for foil, for saran wrap, Ziploc bags. I didn't even know there was like a substitute, a reusable substitute for Ziploc bags. I would love to look into that stuff.
Okay.
And we'll make sure to get it in the show notes.
I don't buy neckties anymore because I have a necktie for funerals and weddings.
Right, and I always buy you a necktie for Christmas, so
Thanks.
and Father's Day.
Yeah, I always wear my Santa necktie to every wedding. New bags. Like Ryan and I developed a bag a couple years ago with Malcolm Fontier and a team of people, and it's like it's the most ideal bag for me. I mean, for me, it's the closest thing to perfect.
It's great.
And there was a time where like I was never happy. Like, I need a backpack or this bag, and like I was finding myself like replacing bags even though I didn't need to, like for travel and suitcases and all this other stuff. But like I think that's one of the key takeaways here. Once you find the thing that is most appropriate for you, that is a long use item. We interviewed Frank for our documentary. He's a minimalist architect, and he said he spent 3 years finding the couch that he has in his house. In fact, he couldn't find it, so he had it built custom. And the reason he did that, he said, I know I'd never have to worry about it again. I just made that decision, and it's a 30-year decision for me. Mm-hmm. And so I think the same is true with a lot of the reusable things that we have. Once we figure out what is appropriate for us, then that decision's made. You don't have to keep remaking the decision. I don't like this luggage. I'll get some more luggage next year. Oh, this will hold me over for a while. Yeah. Make a decision now, and it's making a decision long term.
Yeah, worse, I would buy like just the cheapest, biggest piece of luggage I could, but then that just creates its own problems because now I'm packing more things than what I need to go on a trip. And
when I went on my honeymoon, my former spouse packed 70 pounds in her suitcase. Now, they only let you bring 50 pounds on. So we had to figure out how I could put 20 pounds from her bag into my carry-on bag.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a 6-day honeymoon, 70 pounds worth of stuff. And the thing is, the reason we do that is the same reason that you and I do it. Just in case. I'll pack this just in case, that just in case. And we're not very deliberate. Who knows? I might need this just in case. Mm-hmm. Speaking of just in case, for me, I've reduced the number of cleaning supplies that I purchase now. I tend to buy only natural cleaning supplies, but I clean most things now. And I learned about this. There's a really good book called Healthy Gut, Healthy You by Dr. Michael Ruscio. And he talks about the houses that use the fewest cleaning supplies develop the most healthy, most diverse microbiomes. So it sounds crazy to us now because we think of cleaning means sterile. No, cleaning means getting the dirt off of things, but our microbiome thrives off of having access to good bacteria. And so children who grow up in houses who use dishwashers have less diverse microbiomes than houses who use a sponge to clean their dishes, for example.
Interesting.
Children who grow up in houses who use just water to mop their floors as opposed to harsh bleach chemicals have better microbiomes than the folks who grow up in homes with all the chemicals.
I just drink out of the toilet every morning. I'm kidding.
That'll do it.
So I use fewer cleaning supplies. Do you find that's true with you?
Same. I mean, between baking soda, vinegar, and a little bit of lemon, I mean, essential oils from here and there. Yeah, you don't really need all of those things. My mom loves the smell of Pine Sol and Fabulosa, and it makes me cringe. I just don't want it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I used to love like Pine Sol. I used to love that smell. My mom used it. I'm sure she still does. But like that fresh Pine Sol smell. But like I've been away from it so much that like now when I'm around it, I'm like, how did I ever love the smell of that?
It's strong.
It is.
It's a lot. Yeah, I don't buy cleaning products either. You're just reminding me of all the things that I don't buy.
Well, I stopped buying into the importance of national news.
Me too. That's insane.
I've said this before, but like I've never gone to a news site and left thinking, oh, thank God I checked the news.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the only time recently I've done this is, I've become a Pete Buttigieg fanboy recently. And I've never been excited about a politician because politicians are very unexciting and they all seem like politicians. But the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, is he's the real deal, and I'm not endorsing him. You all go out and, as Ryan says, do your own homework, read more, get informed.
I'm voting for Donald Duck, man.
Just edit that out so he just says Donald. And we'll bleep it out and they'll think he said Trump. We don't care who you vote for personally, what your beliefs are, but Ryan and I did an episode a while ago. I think it was episode 33 called Blame. About the last election. We're going to talk more about politics in the coming months, I'm sure, but from a different approach. Not it's almost an apolitical approach toward politics, but doing so, it requires deep thought. It requires a deep dive.
Yep.
It requires nuance and complexity. It's not black and white. It's a rainbow of nuance. And we need to be able to like dive deep into those topics without saying, well, it's pro-life, pro-choice. Well, no, it's not just that. Even an issue as contentious as that is very nuanced, and we need to be able to talk about these things. So the news, quite often, especially the breaking news, which, by the way, breaking news is broken, then they just communicate the headlines, and it becomes very binary, very black and white, very Democrat or Republican, very man, woman, whatever it is. But life is not binary. Life is a stew of complexity. And in order to talk about those things, we need to listen, we need to read more, and we need to be open to other people's points of view.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the national news doesn't provide that for me the same way as diving deep on topics does. Two other things that I have stopped buying. I'm trying to stop. So this is actually a good...
Jackets.
No, not yet. Not yet. We can talk about that. Things we wish we could stop buying. I wish I could stop buying into superlatives.
Superlative adjectives, superlative noun, what?
Well, superlatives in the sense, I mean, I think they're almost always adjectives, but like this is the best cup of water I've ever had.
Yeah.
This is the best book I've ever read. Really what I'm saying is it's my personal favorite,
right?
Which in and of itself is just is also a superlative. But when I say this is the best album of our friend Sean Mahalik, other Sean we call him to differentiate from podcast Sean.
I thought he was the other Sean.
Other Sean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Sean Mahalik. He helps me out with my How to Write Better writing class. Talented novelist. He also is the editor at Paleo Magazine. He tweeted. It was like January. No, it was February. Who's Neil Gaiman's wife? Amanda.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll put a link to her album in the show notes.
It's not Amanda Bynes.
Yeah. Anyway,
I forget her last name.
He tweeted in February, "This is the best album of 2019," and I'm like, I just responded like, "It's February. Relax." But that's the thing. I'm really talking to myself. Relax, Josh, because not everything's the best. Although the cool thing about like sustainability and having fewer clothes is like now all my clothes are pretty much my favorite clothes. I don't hold on to things. I'm like, this sucks. Right?
Definitely not. Yeah, everything in your closet you look at and you're like, that is the best. So that's really interesting.
But what we're saying really is that's the best for me.
Yeah.
And like if you were to give me your jacket right now, I'd be like, this probably isn't the best for me.
Well, right. I said that before too, because that backpack that I walked in here with, it's my favorite thing. I love that backpack so much. But I've also realized that it's probably not everybody. It won't be everybody's favorite backpack. It just works for me.
Yeah,
so
it's so true. It's like when people ask me about my t-shirts, it's like I could tell you my brand of t-shirt, but like I know if I used Josh's brand of t-shirt, it would not look as nice on me because
you tried to say a khaki shirt once.
Yeah, we have completely different body types.
Ryan's so muscular, manly.
But yeah, it's like it's absolutely true, and I think it's important to just recognize that, like, yeah, just because you have a backpack that you love, and let's say that I really look up to you, which I do really look up to you, like I could very easily get caught in the trap of like, oh man, I got to get that bag that Shelbizlee's got because that's her favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to be really careful about that because, well, we all are influencers. What a word. But yeah, you don't ever want to come out and be like, this is the best thing and you've got to have it, especially when you're approaching it from a sustainability standpoint.
Yeah,
is there anything you've started buying in the recent years where you're like, I didn't think like maybe you gave it up for a while? For me, like Ziploc bags, for example. Again, I'm not just like going around using Ziploc bags as mittens or anything.
Disposable mittens.
They work terribly as mittens. My hands are freezing. No, but I have a list of things that I've started buying since becoming a minimalist. Is there anything that you two can think of?
Are we talking figuratively or like literally with money?
Well, so for me, like print books or something, I got rid of basically all my print books. I had 2,000. I have an essay on our site. Put a link to this in the show notes. How I got rid of 2,000 books and started reading more as a result. Because I realized a lot of my books back then were sort of, they weren't just aspirational, although they were signaling in a way like, look how smart I am. I have 2,000 books, some of which I've actually read. I actually hadn't read most of them, but it was like, they were aspirational that way. Like, oh, of course I'll buy this stack of books. We think we're going to like absorb the knowledge via osmosis. It doesn't work that way.
Putting your book under your pillow at night.
Right.
Yeah, right.
A book isn't an object. This is an experience. You in order to get any value from it, you actually have to read it, or if it's an audiobook, you have to listen to it. And so the books I have now, the way that I keep them in check is we have 2 bookshelves. They're really, you can put a link to our home tour. You can see them in there. And they're 2 small bookshelves that maybe hold, I don't know, 40 books on them or something. And once it gets full, I have to remove a book and give it away or donate it or set it on fire and chase all around the house with it. But the other thing that I do with physical books is I buy them by the case. Books that I've really found value in, like Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Yeah, we had him on the podcast not too long ago.
Atomic Habits. We got some of those in our cabinet.
Yeah. And so Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover. Rob Bell wrote a great book called How to Be Here. One of my favorite short books is an 88-page book called Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. I buy these by the case, and I just hand them out. Have you read Digital Minimalism yet?
No.
We'll give you a copy of it before you leave today. Okay. I'm not being paid to tell you that. I just really, it changed the way I look at social media. It's unbelievable. Cal is a friend of ours, but man, he's so talented. I would definitely encourage you to check that out. But that's what I'll do. And so it's a thing I can, to add value to other people's lives. Like I got immense value from the Total Money Makeover. Why not hand it out to people that I care about? Because if I think they'll get value from it, not just handing it out indiscriminately, right? Like, here, take this book. Right. I'm not handing out flyers on the street corner. It's like, oh, you know what? I really think you get value from it. Here you go. And so I started buying books again, books by the case or books from my own house. I still enjoy books on Kindle. In fact, every night, Bex and I read a book on a Kindle app on my phone. Like right before we go to bed, like I will read until she starts twitching. That's how I know she's fallen asleep. Is she's like full on Twitch mode. I started buying meat again. So I was a pescatarian. I was vegan for a year, and then I was a pescatarian.
He was vegan for 11 months.
Oh, this is true. We had a bet. Ryan won the bet.
He's always exaggerating.
How was that when you were vegan?
Well, I still owe Ryan $1.
Yes. No, it was good. So we had won this trip to Hawaii. And I was like,
we were 25 at the time.
25. Yeah, I was like looking at crash diets because like I wanted to lose a bunch of weight before I went to Hawaii.
For Hawaii.
So I was talking to Josh about this. He's like, well, I've been thinking about going vegan, and I'm like, what's vegan? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. You would never be able to do it. Which is like, that's just my cue to like prove someone wrong about something. So I looked into it, and we had a bet basically who could go vegan the longest. I actually felt really good when I was doing it properly, but then I started to find out like that's when my Oreo addiction really kind of kicked in, is because Oreos are totally vegan. Yes, completely vegan. So it was great until I started to find the really unhealthy substitutes that were vegan. Like a lot of Pillsbury products are vegan. It's crazy.
The healthiest person I know, Rich Roll, is a vegan. He's been on our podcast twice. He's going to be on a third time coming up really soon. Or by the time this comes out, maybe already has been on. We're going to do a Minimalist Diets podcast with him and with Dr. Paul Saladino, who is a carnivore. And so he eats nothing but animal products. And no plants, no vegetables. And we're not going to have a debate because I don't think debates are productive. But what we're going to do is we are going to talk about different perspectives. Yeah. I was a vegan for a year, a pescatarian for 9 years. I changed off of the standard American diet. I was considerably overweight. I weighed about 80 pounds more than I weigh now. And it helped me start moving in the right direction in terms of my health. I started to feel better. It was the best I'd ever felt. And then last summer, I went on a autoimmune paleo diet, which is pretty much like it's closer to a carnivore diet. It was meat and greens and some oils. The carnivores would say you weren't a carnivore, but I did that because I had some serious autoimmune issues, some gut issues. It was the best I ever felt in my life. So veganism helped me immensely. A pseudo carnivore diet helped me immensely.
Yeah.
And I have some struggles with eating animal products, and I want to talk about that with Rich. I want to talk about that with Paul, and I want to do so in a way that isn't a debate. I want to help people, well, as Rob Bell says, help people hear the music, not debate.
Well, yeah, debating. I mean, I don't think debates are useless, but I do think like with diets, it is useless because for me to say, well, here's my diet. And here's what works well for me. This will work great for everyone else. I mean, that's just, it's impossible to have one diet that's going to work for every single person. Everyone has their own.
Everybody seems to have different like things that they react to. And the elimination diet, I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but like every type of food has a different reaction with everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what so last summer when I was on this autoimmune paleo diet, it's essentially a strict elimination diet. So it removes all FODMAPs, which we won't get into right now. It removes all grains and almost all carbohydrates. I mean, greens technically have some carbs in them, and I mean, even meat, protein converts into glucose. We won't go into that right now either. Anyway, I started buying furniture again since becoming a minimalist. If you see my apartment in our documentary Minimalism on Netflix, I basically had very little furniture. In fact, I remember when we moved to Missoula together, I had to get rid of stuff.
Yeah.
We rented a cabin first out near Phillipsburg, Montana, side of a mountain, middle of nowhere. 820 people in Phillipsburg, and there was one traffic light in 3,400 square miles. We rented this cabin. Ryan and I didn't have any furniture. It was already furnished. I mean, there was a coffee table, a couch, two beds, and a dining table. And that was it. We actually had to go buy a writing desk. We basically bought one that was broken. It was $3.
Yeah, from the thrift store.
Yeah,
I had to get L brackets to drill in there and
and so we had a writing desk. Where everything that remains was written at this $3 writing desk that was broken, and so I didn't have much furniture. But since then I have a family, and the needs of the family are different than the needs of the individual quite often. And so I talked about this in my home tour, so I won't belabor the point or beat you over the head with it. But basically, slowly, Bex and I, and Ella, she helped out a little bit, we slowly populated our apartment with things that we found value in together as a family. And we set up some rules that if we're not all going to get value from it, we don't bring it into the house. So I think you walk into our place now and it's not like, oh my God, these guys or this whole family is a bunch of crazy minimalists. No, we own some stuff. But everything we own serves a purpose or brings us joy, and all the excess stuff is out of the way. Yeah. I started buying flowers within the last year for the home.
Like live flowers?
Yeah, live flowers, not plastic flowers.
Buy plastic flowers. I mean, I'll have to come for you.
I'm a big Radiohead fan. But what's the plastic flower song? Cheap plastic watering can.
Plastic flowers. I mean, that's pretty much Radiohead.
Plastic.
Nailed it.
They just made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Did they really?
Yeah, and
that's awesome.
Sean's still mad because Foreigner hasn't made it yet. Sorry, Gen X jokes here. All right, but yeah, flowers, like, it's a ritual. Every week on Sundays, I will go, but there's several flower stores nearby, and we just have these two cheap glass vases. And I came home yesterday, and Bex had bought some like a refresh, and it refreshes the house. Just this one thing.
They smell so good, man.
Right.
Fresh flowers are great.
Yeah.
That is one fragrance I love having in the house, for sure. I can't think of stuff I've bought. Dude, you know what I've been buying more, I guess, or giving more, is like with charities and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like when I was drowning in debt, I found every excuse in the book to like not contribute beyond what my own life was, but now it's like
you still found excuses to buy stuff you didn't need, not pay off the debt. That's true.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but now I mean, like I definitely, whether it's Patreon or whether it's giving to a place like Charity Water, or whether it's giving my time to like a soup kitchen, I find myself doing that a lot more. I can't think of anything else. I'm like, as you've been saying this, I've been trying to think of something that I buy more of. I cannot.
I think I thought of one. I definitely, we find more value in experiences than like things, but to get experiences of learning photography, I definitely have picked up on a lot more quality camera gear. So I was into camera and photography when I was younger, but it was like those disposable cameras. Can't do that. So yeah, I think I've definitely invested in a lot more like camera equipment. Obviously it's my job, but it's more than that. It's a passion. And so like photos and different lenses and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think you guys know who Matt Diavell is, of course, but
Yes.
he always talks about he has so much, camera equipment, so people will think he's not a minimalist. And I feel a similar situation. I definitely have a lot of camera equipment.
But you use it.
Whenever we go over to his house, it looks like a porn set. Because like there's camera equipment everywhere, like in his bedroom. There's like
always asks us to take
scaffolding.
off our shirts. It's really weird.
He's super talented. He's a genius. We first met him in 2013. We hired him to do the trailer for this book, Everything That Remains. And we were in New York doing a preview event where Ryan forgot half of his speech.
Oh, no.
The sad part is I filmed that speech right before I went on stage.
Oh, really?
And directly into the camera.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it was like this big media event.
Yeah.
So like
All the newspapers were there.
I just bombed. It's all right though.
Actually, he didn't bomb. That's the thing. Like somehow, because Ryan's charismatic, like he held it together and just picked up elsewhere in the speech, and it was pretty amazing. But we met Matt, and he came out to film that. The only thing I'd seen up to that point was his video that was like, most wedding videographers suck. He was a wedding videographer at the
Or
time.
his Samesies video.
He did.
That he
Do
produced,
you know about the
or
Samesies video he
filmed,
did?
I mean.
It's hilarious.
Good.
Is it older?
Yeah. We'll put a link to it in the show notes, but just search Samesies on YouTube. It's got millions and millions of views.
Okay.
It's hilarious. It's comedy. Now he was a stand-up comic before. He did like stand-up comedy. That's why his videos are so funny too.
He is funny. But it's very subtle funny.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's that dry humor.
He's got a good sense
But
of
yeah, he's great. But then we saw what he did with the book trailer, and we're like, hey, let's do a film together.
Yeah.
And so that's how it all. He ended up being on the road with us for most of 2014, just filming everything we were doing that
Shelby,
year.
you did remind me of something I do buy more of now.
Okay.
Experiences. Like I definitely, I actually, well, speaking of experiences, like I love good food. Like I really go out of my way to Mariah and I do to experience different, whether it's culture, whether it's like a different take on a specific food. Like we really go out and have different experiences that way. So like I eat out more, but that's also one thing I wish I did less. Is because like I find myself, especially in LA, it's just an endless pit of like, you got to try this restaurant, you got to try this restaurant. It's crazy.
An endless pit of options.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Another good episode title, Sean.
Endless pit of options. Or just pit of options.
Here are 6 questions that I ask myself before purchasing something. So this is a rule that helps me out because you're talking about boundaries there, right? When it comes to restaurants, it's like, you could eat out 4 meals a day every day with no boundaries.
Yeah, Mariah and I, when we moved to LA, like we didn't have a budget. But being like 2 or 3 months into it, I was like, oh man, like we need a budget because we live in LA and everything is 6 times the cost. So we do have boundaries set up that way, but every once in a while, like last month, we totally went over a little bit.
6 questions to ask before purchasing. This is for a good or a service. Number 1, who am I buying this for? Like when you were buying the clothes back in high school, those weren't always for you. It was like
never probably.
Right. It's like I'm buying this to impress other people. Yeah. By the way, I'm spending money I don't necessarily have, or I could be spending in a better way to impress people I barely even know or don't even care that much about. Right? Yeah, I don't even like you, but I hope you're impressed.
Right.
Number 2, will this add value to my life? What I mean by that is, will it serve a purpose to bring me joy? Does it serve a purpose? Does it have a function? This coffee mug, my favorite coffee mugs, they're very ergonomically stable, but they're beautiful too, so they bring me joy in a way. Like it's a piece of art that I also happen to drink coffee out of. Does it add value to my life? Does it serve a purpose? Yes, but also brings me joy. It does both. Now sometimes a piece of art might not have a particular function, but it serves a purpose in the sense that it brings you joy.
I was gonna ask you something if that's okay.
Yeah.
So Marie Kondo talks about a lot of joy, and I have a little bit of a tiff with that, just because when you buy something new, an average consumer, maybe if they're not a conscious consumer, how does one tell the difference between if something is sparking genuine joy or if it's just that dopamine release that comes with buying new stuff? It's like a euphoric experience.
Yeah,
that's confused. We often, and I do it all the time, we confuse ephemeral pleasure with joy.
Yeah.
I think they're certainly not the same thing. Short-term pleasure, you can get short-term pleasure from heroin, right? You can go shoot up some heroin right now. You're going to feel pleasure.
Right.
You're not going to get joy from it. Joy is a long-term, sustained feeling that also aligns with your values. And I think that is a key. So maybe another way to think about joy is, am I being honest with myself with this? Does this align with the person I want to be? Or am I doing this as a Band-Aid, as a quick fix, as a dopamine rush, the same way I am with heroin or checking Instagram?
Yeah, the sparking joy, I totally agree. Can like kind of, because everything could really spark joy. Like my grandfather, he just passed away in January, so my Oma, she's going through all of his stuff, and like she's like, I'll grab a suit jacket, and like I just remember him wearing the suit jacket, and so I put, I don't want to get rid of it, and it's like everything that she touches is sparking some type of joy with the memory of him, but ultimately it's not going to bring her long-term joy. It's a process. That's why I'm going down to help her in a month to kind of help her go through all that stuff.
Help her determine what is actually joyous about the things that she owns and what is in the way. Number 3 is, can I afford it? Now, part of that's the price. Like, can I afford the price tag on it? If you have to put it on a credit card, obviously you can't afford it. You don't have the money. It's not your money.
Right.
But can I afford it in other ways? Like, can I afford the space that it takes up? Can I afford taking care of it? Some things, if we buy an old classic car, like you might have the money for it, but do you have the money for the maintenance on it? Do you have the space to park it? Do you have all the time it's going to take to fix this thing over and over and over? Can you afford to replace the batteries in the thing, change the oil of the thing? What are all these additional costs that we don't think about that go way beyond the price tag? Is this the best use of this money? So if I have $100 to spend on widgets, or is this the best use of, if I spend money on this coffee cup, right? Is that the best use of that money? Well, I'm going to need to buy a coffee cup, so I'm not using a bunch of cheap plastic stuff, every single disposable things.
There you go.
And so I want coffee cups. I'm willing to spend a little bit more for these, but I've made the decision. These are the coffee cups. As long as Ryan doesn't break them, then we're good to go for years.
Bex let me stay at her place in Missoula, I don't know, it was like a few months ago or whatever.
About a year ago, yeah.
Broke 2 of her wine glasses.
Yes.
I'm very clumsy. I'm very, very clumsy.
Yeah. So can I? Is this the best use of this money? And then what's the actual cost? We talked about that. Not can I just afford it, but what is the actual cost of this thing? The cost to the environment.
I was going to say, because there's a whole cost aside from the money that is the environmental cost. And that's really why I love minimalism, and I call it eco-minimalism. There's so much of the cost behind things that nobody realizes. Like, even if you took one of your shirts, for example, the cotton has to be grown. It has to be farmed. It has to be, there's so many pesticides and waters and greenhouse gases that nobody really thinks about when they buy things. So
right. We're not thinking because we don't know about it. It's just like the meat that I buy now. Like I do a good job. I don't do an outstanding job. I'm getting much better at this, buying grass-fed, locally sourced meats that are raised sustainably. It's not I avoid factory farming is essentially what I'm saying, right? And I avoid that 99% of the time. I'm sure there's something out there where I didn't. But it's only because I'm thinking about it, because before I was like, oh, there's the amorphous blob of protein that's in cellophane wrappers. Like, that's of course how chickens come. No, that was an animal, right? That someone had to slaughter, and they had to cut up, and they had to then package and then ship. We don't think about it. It's like, oh, there's the meat. I'll pick it up and I'll eat it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a little bit different. Finally, number 6, would the best version of myself buy this? So the best version of me, like the person I aspire to be like in the future. Well, I'm 37 now. What would my 40-year-old self do? Would my 45-year-old self look back at me and say, you shouldn't have done that. And that sort of helps keep me in check. Not what would some random Twitter troll say about me, but what would myself, the best version of me, what would that person say?
Yeah. That's a good question to ask, like, for anything. Like when you get up in the morning and you like, you've got I've got low energy, and I'm like, man, I really don't want to go to the gym, but I'll ask myself, like, all right, what would the best version of Ryan Nicodemus do right now? And it doesn't always work, but it definitely gives you the leverage you need sometimes.
Yeah, we have an essay about this on our website. Put a link to that in the show notes. It's called WWJD. What would Joshua do? And it's not what you think. But
I love how people they were so offended by them. Some people were so offended by that.
I can't read past the title.
Yeah.
That's
the meme culture we live in, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One more thing before we dive into these surprise questions. One more thing I am spending money on these days. You alluded to it a moment ago, Ryan. I pay more money to be ad-free now.
Me too.
Whenever I can, right? So YouTube has YouTube Premium.
Absolutely.
I pay, what is it, like, I think it's $9.99 or $12.99 a month for that. But now I get no ads if I watch a YouTube video, ever. There's never an ad on a YouTube video.
Is that the same as the YouTube Red? Is that what it's called?
It used to be called YouTube Red.
it.
Okay,
But it's called YouTube Premium now.
Okay.
Yeah. Netflix has no ads. It's one of the reasons we have such a good relationship with them. And it's because they know that what we talk about is about being ad-free, our Patreon and everything else is so we don't have to clutter our podcast website or any of our platforms with advertisements. And Patreon is another thing. I support a lot of creators on Patreon. I mean, there's probably, I don't know, I probably support 15 to 20 different creators on Patreon.
Yeah, we do.
Because it makes sense to do that. If you get any value from someone, like we had Chris Ryan on the podcast, and he has a great podcast that doesn't do ads, why not support them on Patreon or wherever else you can support them so that we can keep things ad-free? Overcast is the podcast app I use. I pay for the premium version of that, so I don't get served up ads on that as well.
Nice.
What else? Is there anything else that you pay for to avoid ads that's out there?
I don't think so.
I know I'd pay to...
Or like Pandora and
Hulu?
stuff like that.
Yeah. Spotify is another one. Pandora is one. Yep. I pay for both Spotify and Pandora. I would pay to not have... I would happily give Twitter $10 a month if they had no ads.
Yeah.
Instagram specifically.
Oh
for
my
me.
gosh.
Absolutely.
Ooh, or Facebook. Like, they're missing a huge capital opportunity.
What the hell
there.
are they doing? Did you see just today? They're in the news again.
Oh, wow.
I think they're just fucking with us at this point. They're forcing some people to enter their email password in order to continue using Facebook.
That's weird.
Can you imagine? Yes, here's my Gmail password. Have access to my private emails.
Yeah.
Wow.
Facebook, thank you.
That's why I deleted Facebook.
Yeah,
Hey, Shelby,
Facebook
how
is-
do you know if someone deletes their Facebook?
Don't worry, Josh will tell you.
I don't know. Facebook is definitely the social media I check the least.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
my thing anymore.
Yeah, we have one. I never check my personal Facebook, but we have the Minimalist Facebook. We use to share articles, basically.
Yeah.
And Jessica does a good job of curating that for us.
Yeah.
All right.
It's Facebook's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I don't get value out of it personally, but as the minimalists, I mean, that's the largest social media platform. Like if it's used correctly, like any other tool, it can be, it can be valuable. But yeah.
All right, we've got a few minutes left here to dive into these surprise questions. Alba in Tustin, California, has a voicemail for us.
In your podcast about clothing, you talked about credit cards being debt cards. My husband and I only have cars as debt, and we're wondering, how do you keep your credit good if you don't have any credit cards? We are planning to have a baby soon, and we're planning to buy a house. How do you stay minimal but also efficient and smart regarding investments?
I'm glad Alba's asking this question because we often think of good credit as a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing to have
Right.
good credit. But Ryan and I don't you don't care about our credit scores because a credit score is not a credit score, it's a debt score.
Right.
It tells you how good you are at managing and moving around debt.
Yeah.
You can make $10,000 a year and have an 800 credit score.
Yeah.
You can make $1 million a year and have terrible credit.
Right.
And so are you good at managing debt? Well, maybe, but who cares how good you are at managing debt? Why do you my question to you is, why do I need a good credit score? And the answer is, I don't. I don't actually need one. And
so for Alba's question specifically, buying a house.
yeah, so there's something called underwriting, and we'll put a link to a Dave Ramsey video about this because he explains it much better than I ever could. But Dave Ramsey talks about you'll find a banker who will underwrite. They look at everything. They don't just look at credit scores. By the way, if you go to a bank and you make $10,000 a year and you have an 800 credit score, they're still not going to give you a mortgage,
right?
Because you can't, they can see you can't pay for it. And so Dave Ramsey, for example, has a 0 credit score. He has no credit score. Now, he's a multi-millionaire, but there are plenty of other people who don't have a credit score because they don't use credit, and they are still able to get a mortgage because they get something called underwriting from a bank. We'll put a link to that as well. Now, with clothing, it's a weird thing. I bet as a teen, you probably thought of clothing as an investment in a way, like I'm investing in myself. But of course, they depreciate quicker than anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I never went into debt for clothes, so that's lucky for me.
That's good news.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But I do have a decent credit score because of student debt. So yeah, and I definitely think that I also still use a credit card for things like groceries and stuff. So you could do that and still maintain a decent credit score, I think.
Yeah.
But I know it's not everybody's thing.
But then asking the question, why do you? If you have a good credit score, great, good for you. I think it's wonderful. I just also think you don't need it. Right. I'm sure I have a great credit score. I don't know. I don't care. I don't care what my credit score is because I don't need it for anything. And I think even if I stumbled across something that I did need it for, there's always going to be a way around that. Whether it's renting a place, they're going to verify your income anyway. One other thing for Alba, sell your cars and pay off the debt. You don't want to go into debt for cars. They're depreciating assets. Having a car payment is always a bad idea.
Yeah.
I never want to do that.
Yeah, and so put another link to a Dave Ramsey video about car debt and why it's always a bad idea. Podcast Sean. He has a couple great videos on YouTube about that. Bianca in Virginia Beach has a question for us.
You always talk about financial freedom, and I'm wondering how you can still find financial freedom when you have all of these essential bills like health insurance, car insurance, phone bills, rent, just the things that you really need that you can't eliminate. If those bills are just adding up and really weighing you down, how do you still find financial freedom?
I think about Jocko Willink's phrase. He used the phrase, discipline equals freedom. And Ryan, how do you find discipline with your bills?
Man, it's funny, like I don't really think about financial freedom as not having to pay bills.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
financial freedom to me is not having any debt.
Yeah.
But we need money to make the world go round. So, Bianca, to answer your question, how do you find financial freedom is become debt free. Like that is the most financially free you can be. I mean, we live in LA, so rent's really expensive. But besides, rent, I really don't have a lot of expensive bills. If I went bankrupt tomorrow and, shit hit the fan and, Josh divorces me and, he takes 100% of the minimalist rights, whatever it is. I'm just, trying to think of worst case scenario there. I could turn my life around on a dime.
Yeah.
And that is what freedom is. It's not about not having bills. It's about having as little debt or no debt.
Well, yeah, and I think the reason I lobbed the softball question at you about discipline and you whiffed it was a budget. You're really good at budgeting.
Oh, so you're asking me about my budget? Yeah, I can talk about my budget for sure, man.
So I think one of the best ways to have a budget is to have, like you just said, having fewer bills. Not about having no bills, but having a budget for what Bianca is calling the essentials.
What's interesting is like when I talk to people about, they'll say I have money problems, and then I'll say, well, what's your budget? Let me see your budget. Oh, I don't need a budget to know that I'm poor. I already know that I don't have enough money, so I don't need a budget. It's like, well, if you don't have a budget, then you're going to be more poor. You're going to have more money problems.
Yeah.
So
it always seems like the less you have, the more you just don't care about what you're spending it. Because I definitely have had that experience where you have a steady level of money in your bank account. You don't feel like the stress of not having money, where you're just like, fuck it all, and I'll just spend all the money I have because I don't have any money anyway.
Right. And that will it just worsens the situation. Yeah, no, a budget, even like I said, when we moved to LA, Mariah and I, we did not have a budget anymore because we became debt free a couple years ago. And living in LA, it's like, wait a minute, like even though I don't necessarily have to have a budget, like I still want to save as much for retirement.
Yeah.
I want to be able to have, enough money in my safety net in case, shit does hit the fan. So in order to do that, like, we had to put a budget together, and so we could save more, essentially.
Yeah, you have to be responsible with whatever resource you have. That is financial freedom, ultimately. Having no debt, but then what resources you have coming in, including your income, it's about being responsible with that money.
Yeah.
And the best way to be responsible, the best way to be disciplined, is to have a budget. One more question here today from Anya from Patreon. She says, I don't know if you can answer this question. Perhaps it's more for your wives, or maybe it's more for Shelby here. I've managed to reduce my clothing purchasing. I'll purchase something I really love after a few months of thinking about it. But I have a hard time with makeup and perfume. I love all the organic stuff, and there's more and more of that now. We also had a question from Anne Marie about the similar question, but about candles, and one more question from Karen about books. And so I think, first off, let me just say this. I think the problem isn't the things. The problem here is the love. You mentioned Marie Kondo, who I think is really helpful. In fact, I got into an argument on Twitter this morning with James Altucher because he's like, Marie Kondo's BS. I'm like, no, she helps a lot of people with their stuff.
Twitter, the best place to have arguments.
Well, I was trying to stand up for Marie Kondo because I think that what she does, a lot of it has to do with the stuff, right? She helps people deal with the stuff. The external clutter is a physical manifestation of what's going on inside us. And once you start dealing with that stuff outwardly, you can look inward and say, oh, I've got some financial clutter. I've got some mental clutter. I've got some spiritual clutter. I've got some internal clutter, the emotional clutter, the psychological clutter, all these clutters that are going on inside of me. I deal with the stuff first. The problem, however, with the stuff is when we cherish it too much. And it's the one problem I have with the KonMari method is, when she talks about the cherishing, keeping the things that you cherish. I don't want you to cherish your things. They're just things.
Right.
I don't want you to love your things. They're just things. I want you to love the people around you. I want you to cherish the relationships, or the experiences, or maybe even the memories, without being too attached to the physical goods themselves. Because what happens if you lose them? What happens if they burn up in a fire? Then you've lost your love all of a sudden? No, I don't think so. So I think what we need to let go of first is the love of the things, and then figure out, how do these things add value, and then what is the appropriate amount for you, and then don't go past the appropriate amount. So Shelby, makeup, perfume, candles, books, clothing. These are all things that people struggle with, right?
Yeah, and all things that I've struggled with throughout my life as well, right? But I think it comes back to, we've talked a lot about boundaries during this, and it's, how much do you need to actually be happy with what you have? Because if we're talking things like makeup, if you just buy all this makeup, like, there's a huge makeup culture on YouTube. It's really a problem. And if you pay enough attention to that, you'll think you need every eyeshadow release that comes out. But you have to set boundaries, because realistically, you will never work through all of that stuff if you buy it. So aside from, like, is it cluttering up your space, it's like, can I actually use that? Is this money just funneling into a product that I'll never really touch, get value from?
Or am I going to use it once or twice, even though, and then move on from it, like you did with the clothes when you were a teenager?
Exactly.
Like, I wore this once or twice, and now I've moved on.
Yeah, I think there is a fast makeup culture right now on YouTube, for sure.
Well, my mother's, it looked like someone was trying to start a makeup store when I was going through her things. Like, she had boxes and bins and tubs of makeup. I think some of it was from the 80s. Like, well, I don't know what was going on there, but it was like, all she needed was the pink Cadillac, and she could have just gone around selling makeup. everything would have been fine. Ryan?
Yes. What?
Candles.
No, I mean, I agree with Shelby about boundaries. I mean, that's what I feel like Anya needs to do here. Like, she needs to set up boundaries for herself. So go buy your candles, go buy perfume, buy makeup. I mean, if that's truly going to add value to your life, but you've got to know when to stop. Like, whether it's the 30-30 rule, the 1 in, 1 out rule, or the 1 in, 10 out rule, whatever it is. Like, Anya, if you don't set boundaries up for yourself, yes, you're going to drive yourself crazy, and you're going to be in a tornado of makeup and perfume.
I think the minimalism game is a good place to start. 30-day minimalism game. We'll put a link to the video for that in the show notes as well. Start with a clean slate, getting rid of the excess that you don't need. It helps you understand what you actually do need. We're overwhelmed with stuff. We often think we need all of it. Oh my God, I'm going to hold on to this just in case. Of course, the just in case items we never get around to using them just in case, right? They're just sitting there.
Always.
Our house becomes a giant storage locker.
Yeah.
Shelby, I want to acknowledge you. You're doing something meaningful with your
awesome,
videos.
Shelby.
Really grateful for you being here today with us.
Thanks.
If we want folks to check you out, where's the best place to go?
YouTube for sure. YouTube.com/Shelbizleee.
All right, cool. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. All right, y'all. Love people. Use things. We'll see you next time.
See ya. Thanks for the support, y'all.
The Minimalists.